Steve Smith, 23rd birthday, Game 7. 14 minutes left in the third period. The Edmonton Oilers dynasty is still alive. This pass is about to end everything. He just scored on his own net in Game 7 on his birthday. The greatest team in hockey history just ended itself. To understand why what just happened was so devastating, you need to understand what the 1986 Edmonton Oilers were. This wasn't just a good team having a good year. This was the greatest offensive machine hockey had ever assembled. Wayne Gretzky didn't just have a good season, he had the season. 215 points, 163 assists, records that 38 years later, no one has come within 40 points of touching. Think about that. In an era of increased scoring, better training, better nutrition, nobody can even get close. Except for Ovechkin, of course. Paul Coffey scored 48 goals. As a defenseman, they had 4 players over 100 points. 3 over 50 goals. No team had ever done that before. No team has done it since. 56 wins, 119 points. The first President's Trophy winners. They weren't chasing a championship, they already had 2 straight. They were chasing immortality. 5 straight cups like the 1950s Canadiens. Everyone wasn't asking if they'd three-peat. They were asking if anyone would ever beat them again. This wasn't supposed to be a contest. Calgary was supposed to be a speed bump. The Flames had other plans. The Battle of Alberta wasn't hockey. It was war, pure hatred. When these teams met, players openly admitted they'd rather hurt each other than win. Edmonton had already crushed Calgary's dreams twice in the playoffs. The Flames thought about beating Edmonton every single day. Not winning the cup, just beating Edmonton. And somehow, impossibly, it was Game 7. April 30th, 1986, Steve Smith's 23rd birthday. The rookie shouldn't even be playing. He's only in because Lee Fogolin is injured. 35 regular season games. That's it. Now he's in Game 7 against the team built specifically to destroy the Oilers. Calgary struck first. Short-handed goal from Ho-Kan Lu. Then Peplinski made it 2-0. The impossible was happening. Calgary was winning Game 7 in Edmonton in front of 17,498 rabid Oilers fans. But champions have short memories. Glenn Anderson scored, then Mark Messier tied it with under a minute left in the second. The building exploded. All the momentum had shifted. 20 minutes left and everyone knew what was coming. The Oilers were about to do what they always did, destroy teams in the third period. The final 20 started with Edmonton pressing, wave after wave. Calgary was bending. Their rookie goalie, Mike Vernon, was standing on his head, but it felt like a matter of time. Then, with 14:46 left, Perry Berezin dumped the puck into Edmonton's zone and went to the bench for a line change. The most routine play in hockey. Steve Smith retrieved the puck behind his own net. No pressure, no forecheckers, all the time in the world. He looked up ice for the breakout pass, he wound up, and fired the puck directly into Grant Fuhr's leg and into his own net. For a moment, nobody understood what happened. The Flames bench was confused. Did we score? How? Mike Vernon, 200 feet away, saw the puck in the net and thought his own team had somehow scored from the other end. Perry Berezin, sitting on the bench, had just been credited with the biggest goal of his life without touching the puck. Then the replay hit the scoreboard. Northland's Coliseum went silent. 17,498 people made no sound. You could hear skates scraping ice. Steve Smith collapsed, face buried in his gloves. The Oilers still had almost 15 minutes. The greatest offensive team ever assembled. Wayne Gretzky, Mark Messier, Yari Curry, Glenn Anderson, Paul Coffey. Surely they could score 1 goal, but something was broken. Every rush lacked conviction. Every shot missed. They were moving through molasses, playing like a team that already knew it was dead. Final buzzer, Calgary 3, Edmonton 2. The dynasty was over. The handshake line was torture. Smith could barely stand. When he reached Lanny McDonald, the Flames captain just nodded. What could you possibly say? In the Oilers locker room, grown men were crying. Wayne Gretzky, who never showed vulnerability, had red eyes and tear stains. And in the middle of it all was Steve Smith, sobbing uncontrollably. This is where teammates could have pointed fingers, where a dynasty could have torn itself apart. Smith had just cost them immortality, cost them a chance at 5 straight cups. But Wayne Gretzky walked over to Smith, put his hand on the rookie's shoulder and said loud enough for every reporter to hear, "It's not his fault. We win as a team, we lose as a team." Then Gretzky turned to the media, his voice harder. Anyone who wants to point a finger at Steve Smith should be looking in the mirror. We had chances before tonight. We had 15 minutes after the goal. We didn't get it done. Mark Messier joined in, Paul Coffey, Glenn Anderson, Kevin Lowe. One by one, the veterans surrounded Smith, creating a protective wall. Smith finally faced the media himself. His voice was barely a whisper. It was human error. I guess I'll have to live with it. I don't know if I'll ever live this down, but I have to keep on living. The sun will come up tomorrow. 23 years old, the worst birthday imaginable. And he faced it head on. The next season, Steve Smith discovered what hell looked like. Every arena, every game, every time he touched the puck in his own zone, he heard about it. But Calgary was special. They'd prepared something just for him. 20,000 voices screaming in unison, "Shoot, shoot, shoot!" then laughing when he passed the puck every single time. The first time it happened, Smith nearly vomited on the bench. It wasn't just mockery, it was psychological warfare. The Saddle Dome had weaponized his worst moment. Smith had two choices, break or embrace it. He chose to embrace it. He later said, "I had to find a way to use the noise. If I let it get to me, I was done." But the cruelest part wasn't the taunting, it was knowing what he'd cost them. The Oilers were supposed to win 5 straight like the 1950s Canadiens, be the greatest dynasty ever. Instead, they'd forever be the dynasty that ended itself. Calgary lost the Cup final to Montreal. Patrick Waugh stood on his head. If Edmonton had gotten past Calgary, they would have destroyed Montreal. They owned the Canadiens in that era. Everyone knew it, but the Oilers didn't abandon Smith. They forced him to keep playing, put him out in crucial moments. When he wanted to hide, they wouldn't let him. Gretzky said later, "We could have destroyed that kid. Instead, we built him back up. Not for him, for us. We needed him to believe he could play in big moments again because we knew we'd have more big moments." 1 year later, April 30th, 1987, Steve Smith's 24th birthday, the Oilers were Stanley Cup champions again. They'd beaten Philadelphia in 7 brutal games. They'd transformed their pain into purpose, their humiliation into hunger. This wasn't the flashy team from '86. This team could grind, they could defend, they could win ugly. NHL President John Ziegler handed the Stanley Cup to Wayne Gretzky. Tradition was clear, captain takes it, skates his lap, passes it to senior players. Rookies go last, if at all, but Gretzky took the cup, raised it briefly, and started skating, looking for someone. He found Steve Smith standing near the blue line, and Wayne Gretzky, the greatest player in hockey history, handed the Stanley Cup to the defenseman who had cost them everything the year before. Smith took the cup and for a moment couldn't move. The same building that had gone silent at his mistake was now shaking with 17,498 people screaming his name. The same ice where he'd collapsed in despair was where he now stood as a champion. Smith lifted the cup over his head and the building exploded. Mark Messier said later, "That wasn't just about Steve, that was about who we were. We don't abandon our own." The image became one of the most famous photos in hockey history. It wasn't just redemption, it was proof that the worst moments don't have to define you. Steve Smith would win 3 Stanley Cups, he'd play 16 seasons, and in the cruelest twist of all, he finished his career in Calgary. Even those fans who tortured him with "shoot" chants gave him a standing ovation in his final game. The Oilers would win 5 cups in 7 years. Not 5 straight, but 5 nonetheless. Every player from those teams says the same thing. They don't win without Steve Smith's mistake. It taught them they weren't invincible. It taught them that talent alone wasn't enough. The sun did come up the next day, and Steve Smith was ready for it. In hockey, glory and heartbreak are separated by inches, by split-second decisions, by the bounce of a puck off a goalie's leg. But champions aren't defined by their worst moments. They're defined by what they do next. Steve Smith scored on his own net in Game 7. On his birthday, it should have destroyed him. Instead, it built a dynasty that learned it could survive anything. Because sometimes the worst thing that happens to you becomes the most important thing that ever happened to you. Sometimes you need to die to learn how to live. The Oilers protected Steve Smith after his mistake, but when Max Pacioretty got driven headfirst into a stanchion, the NHL's response was so weak that Montreal police opened a criminal investigation. This is the hit that exposed hockey's darkest problem.